to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. This will be our second week exploring the soul trait of truth. Right. I was like, trust truth, it's truth. Um, so we'll begin, as we always do, with a short meditation. So I invite you to relax in your seat, close your eyes, and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. If thoughts come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car move past on the road.
Oh,
Now is not the time for solving problems. All you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Hello, Harry. Welcome. Nice to see you.
good seeing you too.
Okay, so short opening slide. Okay, so truth. So I found something interesting in this week's Torah portion. So would someone like to, which we can use for our opening discussion, would someone like to unmute and read this?
Okay.
Thank you.
When a person sins and commits a trespass against you or Adonai,
Yes.
Adonai, by dealing deceitfully with another in the matter of a deposit or a pledge, or anything else about which one swore falsely, that person shall repay the principal amount and add a fifth part to it. One shall pay it to its owner upon realizing guilt.
Thank you. Okay, so framing up truth again, there's a few pieces here. So here we're talking about someone who has been deceitful with another person with something, it's a financial matter, or about swearing falsely. Um, what is there's sort of two things I notice about this. There's probably many more than two, but I'm wondering what are some things that you notice about this situation? Yes, Bonnie.
Well, I don't see that the person who was deceitful has acknowledged it. I
Yeah,
don't see that. Secondly, fascinates me that they not only will repay the principal, again, I don't know if they've acknowledged it, but there's a tax on or a penalty.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So they're paying a penalty. I took out a couple of verses, so there might be something in there that talks about acknowledging it, but that's definitely a part of our modern practice. And it sort of says, realizing their guilt, but they may or may not be apologizing and doing anything verbally. It's just talking about repaying and paying with a penalty. Yeah, Beth. If you could remember to unmute, please.
Sorry. They swear to this. And so that makes me think that they must have, like, at least in swearing, okay, they swore to the fact that they swore and lie. They swore to their lie, or did they? What were they swearing to?
So I think it's like taking an oath or like giving a promise, like I will repay you this money or I will do something, um, I will do something financial and that they were deceitful.
Okay, but there's an oath involved.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and so presumably they wouldn't repay plus a fifth, like Bonnie was saying, if they weren't guilty of it.
Yeah.
So there's an action, but there's perhaps no words.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a penalty for sure. And Wendy.
Sorry about that. I love this because I dreamed this because I didn't really have a lot of time to practice this week. But I dreamed this dream and it was about a court. So I'll explain that later. But what I really love is that when a person sins and commits a trespass, it's against Adonai.
That's right.
That's what the person's doing. And Adonai is listed first. So I like seeing that.
Mhm.
Because in the court, it used to be that people would swear on a Bible. It used to be. And they'd say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Now they've taken a lot of that out. I know they don't do that anymore. But they just say, I'll tell the truth. But in having their hand on that Bible, I was thinking, kind of, it was saying, hey, if you don't tell the truth, it's actually against God. And
Yeah.
then it says, but so help me God. And that's where I started thinking about Hesed and how Hesed applies to truth. So that's all.
Yeah. And so what are your thoughts about Hesed and truth?
Okay, so I'm thinking, so help me God, because in the beginning, when I first started studying Mussar and we got to truth, I said, I got this. I always tell the truth. I'm completely against not telling the truth. I never don't like it. But I've learned over the past 5 years that that's not the whole picture. It's
Mhm.
not that you want to go running around lying, but God needs to be in the picture. And God needs to put Hesed in you. The there's 3 words: intimacy, devotion, and love.
Hmm.
I found Hesed means. So, what's going to be the outcome of you telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth? And interestingly enough, all attorneys will tell their clients, if somebody asks you a question, just answer it quickly with just as few words as you could possibly use. Yes or no is the best way. Because if you go on and on about, oh, but, and I think this and I think that, then you might be dealing deceitfully. And
Mhm.
God will help you not do that. And I think God will see what's best for everybody and then put into you what you're supposed to be telling people, not going on and on about something that you may not know anything about. I just thought it was really great that it was against Adonai and against Adonai first before the other person even comes into play.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, and I want to, if I forget to, I want to come back to your comments about Hesed as well. We'll hear for some more people first. Okay, so Harry.
Yeah, if you don't mind, but I AI'd that Leviticus verse,
Uh-huh.
and it did say as one of the answers, and it emphasizes the importance of acknowledging the wrongdoing and making amends.
Okay.
Because I guess you abbreviated a little bit, but there was an importance of acknowledging.
Great. Thank you. I thought there might have been, so that's good.
Yeah.
answers Bonnie's very reasonable question, because that's so big a part of our teaching is we need to acknowledge our wrongdoing. Thank you, Harry.
Yeah.
Sue.
I love Wendy's emphasis on Adonai because one of the things, and I went back and watched the video from last week and looked at the chapter, was that God sits on the throne of truth.
Hmm.
So there's the God right there, which is great, you know? And the question is, do we bring God into this? Is it, you know, what is truth? Who's telling the truth? God knows. God is all knowing. God will know the truth
Mhm.
is the bigger question. So I like that. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, thank you, Sue, because this isn't one of these situations where two people have a conversation and they both walk away with different ideas about what was talked about. This is someone was deceitful. Someone was doing something that was false, and that's an issue. That's a we all may have different, we all do have different ideas about the divinity, but the idea is this is a bigger issue. Like when you break faith with another person, when you damage that relationship or distort it in some way, you have gone against the law of the universe or sort of a basic relationality. And that was one of the things I found really, really striking as well. It also, when we talked about Chesed a couple of months ago, we talked about this idea that the world was built on Chesed, right? So doing something to support another person builds the world. Where here you've undermined another person. Here you have deceived them. Here you've stolen their money or not repaid it or not done something correctly. And so I think about the world's built on Hesed. I always think about like Pink Floyd's The Wall, and they keep adding another brick to the wall, and here you've knocked a brick away, and so the penalty is you have to pay back the brick and then plus 20% because it's hard to kind of get back, and that relationship will probably never be the same or may not be the same, but at least that damage can be undone. Beth, and then Wendy.
I read something, they did a sociological study, and one thing that really stuck with me, because at the time I was having trouble with a particular friend, acquaintance, and the article said that when a person is offended or hurt in a social situation or any situation, it takes 5 times for the two people to have a good interaction before it takes away the memory of the bad interaction, of the time your feelings were hurt or you were lied to or you were insulted. And that is exactly the mathematics of Hashem, because you have to add a fifth or 5 times.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Beth. Wendy.
I just have a question.
Okay.
It says about dealing falsely, so that there's a loss of some kind of, like maybe money, maybe items, and then it says swear falsely. And so we have a group that we're reading Proverbs, and there's a lot in Proverbs that talk about the weight and having the weight wrong and robbing people through false weights. There's a little bit about swearing falsely, but I can't remember a lot. But this put the two together and then said, here's how you're going to make retribution. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to pay for it all and then a fifth more. And I'm wondering, with swearing falsely, how are they going to come up with how much that's worth? What's the payment for swearing falsely?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. My understanding is here, this is a context about financial transactions, and I think some of the commentators talk about that. So it might be different than like, where were you? I just went out to, I had to work late when actually you were out, running around with your friends or something. That's sort of a different, perhaps a different equation where you don't have to pay a 20% penalty. You just have to pay for a divorce lawyer. And then,
So the swearing falsely that has an outcome, a financial outcome.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a promise to repay or something along those
Okay.
lines.
Thanks.
Hiya.
Well, first of all, I apologize if anybody I dropped. Did you guys hear me swear? Oh, good. Because yeah, I dropped a bottle of water all over my table.
Oh,
Anyways,
no.
yeah, I was like, oh boy, and right in almost into my computer. But anyways, what I'm interesting last night, my Mussar group in the Twin Cities here, um, we were talking about chesed. And the thing that we were talking about that I thought was I'd never thought of it this way, is that chesed is about not just welcoming, but escorting
Mm,
someone. So, in other words, saying hi, come on in, or whatever is all fine. But if you're not being with them and going with them to wherever they need to go or whatever they're feeling, if even enjoy, I mean, you can be invited to a birthday party, but nobody is there they might say, come on in, but nobody talks to you the whole time.
mm.
So I thought that was really an interesting way of looking at chesed.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And it reminds me of a story of the Mussar teacher, Alan Moranis, told where he was in Israel and he was going to meet like a Mussar rabbi somewhere. And he got out of his cab and he was, standing there and he was asked someone, "Oh, can you tell me where I can find so and so?" And he said, "Oh, I'm Rabbi so and so. I knew you were coming, so I waited here for you so I could escort you to, my office." So it's it's kind of yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and this came from, remember I showed you what we're using,
yeah.
and that was, yeah, from Rabbi David Jaffe, the Tikkun Midot Project.
Mm. Yeah, that's very, very good stuff. All right, well, let's take this a bit deeper. Okay, so this is what we talked about last week. So we never even got to any further than that one slide last week. It was such an incredible discussion that we had. So let's talk a little bit about the spectrum of truth. And I think that Wendy sort of touched upon this. And the mantra, or one mantra, is be distant from falsehood, which comes out of the Torah. Um, and then we have this spectrum of truth, where if we have too much truth, it could really lead to hurtful speech or hurtful behavior. And I think as I wrote about, this used to be me. I was like, there's no such thing as being too blunt. People can't handle it. They really need to kind of deal with that on their own. And this was, caused some unnecessary pain for other people and for myself in the long run to do that. But the flip side, too little truth, it's interesting. It erodes trust, the pillar of the world. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with this Hesed connection, where you're not repaying someone's money. It's a sin against God. It's destruction of a relationship or damage of a relationship, and it really just undermines the world. You can't have, a society if there's not some level of trust between people. So, okay, that's my initial bid. So what do you folks think? What comes up for you when you look at the spectrum? Yes, Eileen.
What comes up for me is just that I err on the too much truth and and I think there's a lot of discernment that one needs when it comes to how much truth and what truth you tell and how you tell it.
Mm,
Um, I've gotten in I've gotten in some trouble, not terrible trouble, but when I've been too blunt, maybe like you a little bit, um, too blunt. And I actually didn't know I was too blunt, but I didn't think about it ahead of time. And so it makes me really slow down before I speak.
mhm. Thank you, Eileen.
Yeah.
Harry.
Yeah. Well, when you get into truth, you got to say whose truth is it?
Mm,
Because it's become, you could say you can come up with what you think the truth is, but it may not be.
mhm,
It's only based on your appraisal, which is judgmental.
mhm,
So there's always a question of what is the truth, unless you spend the time with the other person or the facts to really determine what the real truth is. So, truth is, I know we've talked a lot about it today, not today, but in our political life about, what the truth is. But I
mhm,
think we always have to understand that our truth could be just plainly judgmental.
mhm.
And therefore we need to be cautious about responding to whatever we're responding to.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Harry. And that is, it's just reminding me, it's so easy to take something that I read in the news or read on social media, it's face value, and then maybe I get all upset or I get all happy. And, you know, things get so, at best, things get really flattened, and nuance gets lost often in writing. And, worst, it's just cherry picking certain things to make certain points. Um,
Exactly.
Sue.
It just makes me think of the old adage, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. And basically, when I think about dealing with people, I think, is it, first of all, is it kind? But then is it necessary?
Hmm.
Because I think some truths might be necessary, but if you're commenting, if there's something about a person that you might not like, it's not necessary, and it's definitely not kind, unless there's some reason for it, like a safety reason. If someone's in trouble, and you have to tell them, don't do that because you're something, it's a safety. But if it's just what they're wearing or you don't like, something, that's kind of how I try, don't, so you err more on the silent part if it's not kind and not necessary as far as truth goes.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue. Toby.
I spent pretty much the rest of, oh man, 20 years trying to figure out what the truth was. This goes back to what Harry was saying. As a criminal defense lawyer, of course, your client is going to tell you something, which may or may not be the truth. Mostly not. I've been doing this a really long time, and you come to the point where you take it with a grain of salt. But the interesting thing is, especially in complicated cases, you talk to a whole bunch of people. Each police officer that was there is going to tell you something, and mostly they don't tell the same story. So, and then you go and interview the civilian witnesses, and of course they have varying stories depending on what their interest is in the whole thing. And if you have a case with 100 and some odd witnesses, and that includes the police, of course, and the crime lab people and whatever, you're going to have 100 and some odd stories about what happened or what the evidence means. Okay, you've got a crime scene analyst to analyze this DNA, and and it's by the time I was almost done with my career, I realized that, it doesn't really matter what the truth is. It only matters what the prosecution can prove. And I mean, when it comes to trying cases, but my job was still to figure out what the actual truth was, what really happened. Because you can't tell a story, which is what you're doing when you're talking to a jury. You can't tell a story if you don't at least have some semblance of a story to tell. So it goes back to what Harry was saying. Like I said, there are 50 different shades of truth. And when you're trying to be kind to someone, especially, I mean, if you have something to tell them that is for their good, there's still a kind way of telling it.
Absolutely. And there's this idea we talk about, I don't think we're going to get to it today, but this executing the judgment of truth, which is where you're trying to put together all these different stories or putting together the different sides, or the really hard one is seeing the truth from another's perspective. And that's, yeah, it's challenging. Was that Paul or Carrie? Yeah, Paul, nice to see you.
Yeah, good to be here. So I think that for me, the last point that you were talking about is the one that I think of as being, for me, it's the most important one at this point, because I can't do anything about all the discourse that's happening, nationally or internationally, anything like that. But if I'm sitting down with Carrie or a good friend or somebody I've never met before, and we have different points of view about something, then I think my role is to just stay curious, keep my counsel until I understand what the perspective is on the other, from the other person. And that way I can start to understand how we might look at the same event or the same circumstance and just have different parts of it that are important to us, that mean something to us. And I think that's where the stories start, is the parts that we choose to include that are being, relevant. Maybe they're all true and that they all exist, but the ones that are relevant are the ones that we start making stories with, which I guess goes to what Toby was saying as well. But I certainly, for me anyway, I'm finding that I listen to things that are happening on the outside, and I watch YouTube videos or other thing podcasts, try and stay up on what's happening. But again, the most important thing is when I'm dealing with somebody individually or in a very small group, because that way I feel like I have some chance of having some clarity.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, it's really, really different. It kind of goes back to, it's sort of the other side of what we read from Leviticus today, where you can really do something to damage a relationship, by distorting the truth, but by trying to understand someone else's truth, what I'm hearing you say is the implication is you can build a relationship.
Yeah.
Carrie.
I was thinking about the truth with children. I remember when my kids were little and they would fight, and I would sit them down and hear each side's story, and I have them hear each side's story. And I had to remember that what was true for each of them was not just what happened, but how they perceived the world, where they were in their developmental states. And it was interesting to work with that and have them understand one another and come to some kind of consensus. So I was thinking, okay, so little kids are developmentally different, and I think even adults are in different developmental stages, and that we just can't, there's so many, like Toby was saying, there's so many factors in figuring out the truth and how to help people figure out their truth. It's just, thank you.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I thought I was really struck by what you said about helping people figure out their own truth. I mean, yeah, sometimes I don't know what I believe, you know. So I don't know what my perspective is on something. Come on up. Oh, we got a little visit from Lila. Yes, hello. Okay, Marjorie, were you raising your hand or were you just moving around? Nope, okay. All right. Okay, so where do we go from here? There's a saying in the Midrash, falsehood has no legs. And it has to do with the Hebrew alphabet. So truth in Hebrew is emet, aleph, mem, taf. And then falsehood is sheker, shin, kuf, resh. So I'm going to share a different screen now. Okay, so here is the Hebrew alphabet for people who may not have a knowledge of it. This cat, the truth is the cat just bit my ear. That's not cool. Okay, so emet, we have aleph, mem, taf. That means truth. And what do you notice about the letters? Yeah, Sue.
Well, I don't know about the legs. I know that the letters are the beginning, the middle, and the end of the
Yes.
alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something about legs, like it doesn't have legs. Is that what?
Falsehood has no legs. And so
Yeah.
falsehood is sheker, shin, kuf, resh. These three here. So you have these three that are sort of all clustered together, and these others which are spread out. So you get this broad base. It's like a three-legged stool or something, where you have a lot of stability from the truth. And falsehood is has a narrow base. Okay, little kitty. Yes, Wendy.
I was just going to say Emmet encompasses it all. It's the total.
Yes.
So I don't know about the falsehood being all crunched together like that. I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem to have much wisdom to it, but encompassing it all would be
Yeah. There was I believe there's a saying that it's attributed to Jesus that I'm the Alpha and the Omega. And Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet, and Omega is the last letter of the Greek alphabet. It's actually the same idea. Jesus was a rabbi, and it was sort of like this whole, again, encompassing everything. So is that at all of comfort to you, this idea that, maybe falsehood is inherently unstable or is hard to maintain, and that truth somehow, I think there's an optimistic viewpoint here that somehow truth will win out in the end. And so, yeah, Sue,
Truth will set you free.
truth will set you free. Carrie.
I think that if we didn't believe that, we would not be able to live. I mean, if we didn't believe that the truth would ultimately win, we would lose hope. And without hope, you just fall apart. You just don't live. Everything collapses. And I think, we don't want to talk politics, but I think that's really relevant right now, what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That we have to have hope. And during the Holocaust, there was hope, even though it was just horrendous. So, I think we're just by nature, because because we're human, civilization won't survive if we don't have hope.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Carrie. That was well said. All right, I'm gonna see if I can, this cat is gonna need a nap here. We get her down for her nap. There you go. Wendy.
Well, there's this other thing about getting to the bottom of it. And so I'm thinking of Emet. You start with the Aleph and end with the Tav, and you go through the middle and you go through the whole thing, getting to the bottom of it, digging and digging until the truth will be apparent to you. And then you can maybe act on that or not, just depending on what you're going to do. But that's what I meant, because Aleph and then the Tav, you're going all the way through till you get to the bottom of it.
Getting to the bottom of it is curiosity, investigation, important elements of exploring truth for sure. Harry.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I did an AI thing on truth.
Okay.
I'm not going to read the whole thing, but which is interesting. It's an interesting comment. It says defining truth is a complex philosophical endeavor, and there's no single universally agreed upon definition. However, there's a breakdown of common understandings, and there's different theories. It's called, I'm not going to get into it, correspondence theory, coherence theory, pragmatic theory, agreement with fact or reality. This is a core element, emphasizing the connection between truth and what is actually the case. And then I think in essence, truth can refer to objective reality, like it's day and it's night. 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8. And there's accurate statements about that reality and honest and something called honest and sincere behavior. So it's out there. I mean, that's why truth is a challenge. And I guess we got to respect that.
Yeah.
I guess is the bottom line, especially when it said there's no universal agreement on what truth is. Isn't that something?
That's right. Bonnie.
So I don't think we need a universal agreement. I think for me, if I act in an honest way and that I have a job in the world, which is to make it a better place as a mother, as a grandmother, as a community member, I have that job. And I think that and truth are more important for me than having a common vocabulary as to what exactly the word truth means. I think it's the actions that we do that really set us apart. And I think for me, Judaism does that.
Thank you, Bonnie. All right, well, let's get ready for our breakout groups. So for this week, it's a teaching from Rabbi Jennifer Gubitz in the Mussar Torah commentary. And she's pointing out that Isaac, he had all these struggles, but he doesn't talk about it. He chose the quiet path to healing. So imagine facing a trying situation in your life and speaking truthfully about it. And she asks, how might the Genesis story have been different if Abraham, Isaac, Sarah, or Hagar had spoken out? So the question to kind of discuss with your partner is, how do you approach when to tell the truth, when to speak out in a particular situation? And here they're talking in kind of the relational context. And of course, Wendy Mogul gives the other side, which is you don't have to tell everything. You don't have to tell your kids everything that happened. And I'm watching The White Lotus season 1 right now, and there's a whole storyline about how much do you disclose to your kids, and etc. So yeah, so that's kind of the idea. Let me open um, the breakout rooms. Do you want? I'll just put the question in the chat also. Um, hey, the rooms are open. There we go. Okay, so as people were starting to come back, one person commented, "Oh, whenever I see like the time to leave, I just sort of click out early." And we it made a joke. Well, you could bring that into the Mussar practice, but it reminded me of something that I heard. It was wasn't in a Mussar context. It was probably in like a leadership meeting when I was in corporate. And it was something like the subconscious cannot tell the difference between like when it reads something, it can't tell the difference between what's true and what isn't. And so we get this stimulus that says like do X, that like it takes work and discernment to decide, oh, am I going to do that or not? So there's part of us that's like, yep, let's go. Here we are. Um, And that's why, like, when we talk about silence, that's why, like, gossip is so bad because people hear something. And even if you later hear it isn't true, you can never unhear it, never forget sort of the untruth that you heard. Um, so, how are the discussions? Does anyone have anything, insights they would like to share? Yeah, Michael.
I want to say thank you for for the question, because it is to me that kind of sharing, the sharing of the challenges and vulnerabilities that I have in my life, are really the only gifts I have to give. It's the only truth at the end of the day that really, really matters, because it's the only truth that can really move a relationship forward. And people will feel more comfortable with me if they know I'm coming from where I'm not trying to be holier than thou, where they get that I'm a person who struggled, I have failings, I'm just a human being, and that to me is that's it. That's all I have to share in the world. And if I say nothing else, it's probably better. So thank you for that. That question really, really worked for me. And Harry and I chewed on what it would sound like if Isaac said it, and that's a conversation for another time, another place, I think.
Uh-huh.
But thank you for the question.
You're very welcome. Sue, and then Carrie.
One thing I wanted to bring up, and you mentioning of Isaac also keyed into that, is that the idea of when to speak up too is there's shalom bayit, peace is one of the things we brought up. And I remember reading about Isaac I think this was true, that he was the peace guy. I don't know. If you look at Abraham was the welcoming, Isaac was the peace. But there's a piece of that, of when to speak up if you want to keep the peace in your home, in your neighborhood. And again, I always say this, if it's necessary, if there's danger involved or there's a reason to speak up, then yes. But sometimes it's best to keep silent, just to keep the peace.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Sue. Let's see, Carrie, did you have your hand up earlier? No, okay, Wendy.
That reminds me, Sue, of like peace in the house might not be going to one of your children of 12 or 13 and saying, "You're my favorite," in front of them, or even just to the person. So in Isaac just saying, "Look, I'm not about to tell you that I really love Rachel better, or what, you just don't do those kinds of things because then it's going to backfire on you. It's true, but you shouldn't say it because, that I can just imagine those Hagar and I could just imagine all of them just coming together and then just coming against him. If you tell too many truths, you might be in trouble. But that's kind of shalom bayit, I think. It's like you were saying.
Yeah. And of course, we can look at the flip side. Sometimes if you can be going for too much shalom bayit and it's a household where no one says anything and it's filled with secrets and it's peaceful and everyone's miserably peaceful because things don't get addressed. So like all of these things, it's what's the right, someone used the word discernment earlier, really trying to figure that out and thinking it through. Anyone else care to comment? All right, well, we will, then I will invite you to close your eyes once again and take in a nice leisurely in-breath and a nice leisurely exhale. Let's take a moment of gratitude for all the souls who shared this journey together today. And may we have a week of peace.